Thanks for joining us for this episode. And I want to let you know about an opportunity that we host every month as part of Church Advance. It's the Church Advance Hour of Encouragement. Now, this is something, again, that we do every month, and it's actually very often content that later gets featured on the podcast. So during this time, Brian's going to have a kind of a teaching session, and then he's going to open it up for discussion and questions. And then many times we close out the hour in prayer. And it really is an encouraging time for pastors and church leaders, and it's free for anyone who wants to join. And so I want to encourage you to have part in our next hour of encouragement. And if you want to learn more and get signed up, again, it's completely free. Just head over to briansams.com and get registered for the next Church Advance Hour of Encouragement. That's briansams.com. Well, thanks so much again for joining us for this episode as we continue to advance a reformation of fellowship, partnership, and gospel hope amongst Bible-believing pastors and churches. This is Church Advance with Brian Sams.
That was the big lesson for my sabbatical. Okay. This whole idea that I don't have to need, I know some guys, they run so hard. It's like every other month they've got to take 2 or 3 weeks off. Well, I don't think I don't think that is healthy. I think regular and systematic rhythms of silent solitude and hard work with the right kinds of practices will enable you to do that. Now, let me say before I get into my my little outline here that I want to give you is let me see if I'm going to cover it. Yeah, I'll get into that. Let's go through these, Luke.
Okay,
So here's the basic outline: 10 ways that I can eliminate noise in order to gain more peace and productivity. That's what we're talking about. With that lengthy introduction, I think that'll help us get where we're going.
Well, I think before we get into these, I think it is important that, we are kind of starting with why. Why do you need to implement this in some way? Because I can already, hear some of the potential, criticism and kind of doubts that are going to come from people out there that are going to say, hey, look, Brian, that's all good and great. Like, but I'm a one-man band here at my church, and I've only got, it's just me and whatever. And I know, guys like that, that's their situation. Or even on the other extreme, I don't know what's worse, having a small church and being a one-man program, or actually being a part of a larger church where you're part of a staff where the programming at the church is so intense. Again, speaking from my experience, that's where I was at, a larger church with just a lot of programming going on. And it's so intense that you just feel caught in that whirlwind. And so I do think that it's important that we do emphasize, and we have emphasized here, the why of why you need to implement these rhythms. And like you said, Brian, it's not necessarily, you gave a little kind of testimony from your particular sabbatical, but let's emphasize, that's the first time you've ever done that in 20 years. How many weeks total was it again?
7 weeks. And that was started the first day of June. So it was basically all of June and the first 3 weeks of July. And it ended with my 6th anniversary at the church. So the completion of 6 years at the church, going into year 7, which I'm now getting ready to complete year 7. And this was, Luke, and I think I may have talked about this in that episode 56, but in short, I had a long conversation with my deacons and our pastor leaders, explaining to them my desire for longevity, and that the neck break pace I'd been on for 20 years, including my neck break pace time at West Coast Baptist College, and then of course coming into a broken church and giving everything for the first 6 years just to keep the church afloat. And so, I felt like if I was going to make it 20 more years, Lord willing, then I needed to do something to not just take a break, but also reassess and then come out different. And I can tell you, from July of last year, I'm a different person, man. I do things differently.
Mm.
I'm in a, I feel like I'm on, I'm on a, this is going to sound terrible, but that's the only way I can describe it, a vacation mindset.
Hmm.
I have a mindset that I am not going crazy. I'm not going to spend evenings in my office killing myself. I'm going to be focused like a hawk when it's that time.
Yeah.
Honestly, Luke, I think we waste enough time and we're distracted by so much that if we genuinely were to eliminate some of the noise and stay focused, we would have both things going on: high productivity, high
Yep.
peace, and a reasonable relationship.
Yep.
So what I did was my conclusion was that I was going to put into my life specific practices that would enable those outcomes.
Yeah.
And unless I made these adjustments, I wasn't going to get there.
Yeah. And so again, like you said, it starts with a mindset. You have to have that mindset change. And I will say again, speaking from my experience, it's a bit of a reprogramming process. Because if your mind, and this could apply to anything in life, but when it comes to your work and your ministry, career, productivity, whatever you want to call it, if you have this mindset of going nonstop, and you talked about your time at West Coast Baptist College in particular, and they just have, and it's pretty typical for the Bible college kind of um,
Mhm.
mentality and philosophy. They really did ingrain this constant idea of busyness. I remember as a student, you had just felt like no breaks between classes, chapels, dorm devotions, room devotions, all this stuff, bus ministry, other ministries, church, Sunday school at 7:45 in the morning that you taught.
You were there.
Uh,
That's right.
yeah,
You were at the 7:45. I mean, like honestly, like you guys needed another teaching time. I felt terrible for you guys. I did. I felt terrible for you guys. You guys are having dorm devotions at 10:30 at night. People are
yep,
wanting to go to sleep. Uh, Good gravy, man. Chapel every day of the week,
yep,
and
yep,
then and honestly, and again, this is true. I think of all these kinds of Bible college atmospheres. Um, the staff and the students of the college took the brunt of so much because they had to do both.
yeah,
You had to be college and church, basically. You had to be a good church member. A church.
yep,
So, man, I mean, my goodness, I had to go. With all the outreach and all the stuff that was going on, my goodness, and I felt terrible for you kids, man.
yeah.
And I mean, yeah, I just felt like your education got hurt in some ways because of this need for all these other things that you had to do, and under the guise, I guess, of uh, um, you know local church experience. And
Yeah,
again,
exactly.
I know some people could debate me on that. That's totally fine.
Yeah,
But man, the
yeah,
bottom line is you were there predominantly to get an education, and this is
yeah.
not a slam fest on any
I was
Bible
gonna
college.
say,
It's just the truth.
yeah, and really the overarching kind of point here we're trying to emphasize is if you were ingrained in that mindset, whether it be from a particular Bible college or just growing up, in a particular style of church and ministry. And you know what? I'll say this just so that those people out there don't think we're just trying to hate on a particular college denomination or church in general. I see it happen for people that are not involved in ministry in any way. They just are obsessed with their work, and they just live and breathe work, and that's all they do, and they work hours and
Oh
hours and
yeah.
hours. And so again, it's a mindset shift that has to happen first. And as we get into some of these more practical steps, you just have to understand, because some of this, yeah, I mean, I could see people are going to push back. In fact, number two, when we get to it, people are going to really push back on that one. And so,
Oh
with
yeah,
that in
yeah. I
mind,
love number two.
yeah, yeah. So let's get
Yep.
into the 10 ways to eliminate the noise in order to gain more peace and productivity. And let's start with point number one. Just move in order here, which is going to be actually use the do not disturb feature. And I think Apple actually calls it the focus feature now that's enabled on your phone. So yeah, Brian, let's talk about that one.
Yeah, so that's where I kind of got the title of this lesson was do not disturb. Now I know that's what they used to call it. It says a little old school. Focus is like I think you're right. The word there, But there is a feature on your phone, and I'm sure it's true of Android too, where you can set your phone to not take phone calls, to not
Hmm.
take notifications. Basically, your phone is there if you need it, but it's not speaking to you. Okay. Now, me, on a normal work week now, I turn that feature on until 11 o'clock every morning during the work
Hmm.
week. The only person, there's a way in the settings you can set this. The only person who can get through to me during that time is my wife. And she knows, though, that this is the time where I need to think deeply. I need to work in a creative space. This is when I am at my freshest. This is when I think clearly, and frankly, Luke, this is when I need to do sermon preparation.
Hmm.
We've talked about content creation, living in a creative space. For me, the majority of that creative space is creating teaching content, and if I'm going to focus and I'm going to get the most out of sermon preparation, lesson preparation, uh, preaching, at some event, then I'm going to have to focus during that time, and I cannot be on my phone. I cannot get every text message that comes in or every notification from, whatever app that I have. I would just say every single person needs to do deep work.
Yep.
It might be your devotions. Let's say you're a manual labor. Well, you don't have to do deep work when you do manual labor, but you might need to do deep work before you go to your manual labor job. My grandpa worked in a factory, a plant all of his life, and he took time during his lunch break to work on his Sunday school lessons years and years and years ago. Well, that might be you. You might listen to this podcast and you're a layman, and so you don't have the freedom to create like I do it for a living, but you do. I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast, you probably teach Sunday school class. You have some kind of interaction in ministry, and so you will need to create that. Now, I say in the morning. I'm not talking about when you do this. I know people who are their highlight reel begins at like 10 o'clock at night. My highlight reel begins at like 5 o'clock in the morning.
Hmm.
So I can't function at 10 o'clock at night as far as that kind of stuff. I can laugh and play a game and watch a movie maybe, but I can't think and write and prepare sermons. So pick a time where you need to do deep work in a creative space and do that. And Luke, we've touched on this before, but just think about, and you may have more updated statistics. You can speak to this, but I did just a few normal thoughts. Some people say we spend between 5 and 8 hours a day on our phones.
Yeah.
We check our phones, and Apple does this now with the newest update. It will tell you how many touches you make, how many
Yep.
times you pick up your phone,
Yep.
and it is said that it's 96 times a day. Do
Yeah.
you realize that is once every 10 to 12 minutes you touch your phone?
Yeah.
You Some have suggested not to check our I say check our phone. We unlock our screens 150 times a day and we touch our phones over 2,000 times a day.
Whew.
Now guys,
Yep.
here's the bottom line. You cannot focus on your work with your phone at your beck and call
Yep.
nonstop. It becomes a slave to you become a slave to it.
Yeah.
And I have found enormous help in just setting the phone aside, do not disturb. I'm not touchable in communication during that
Yeah.
time so I can focus on
Yeah.
work.
And I use these same features. In fact, my time frame's about exactly as what you're saying. In fact, it's funny when we text or each other in the morning. Sometimes, I've missed calls from you. You miss calls from me. If we ever try to call each other in the morning because we both have that feature on, and
Yeah,
so
yeah,
text messages. It's not that I won't reply to one, but I'm not getting notified. And so every once in a while,
right.
I'll take a break and I'll be like, oh, oh, hey, there's a text from so and so. But yeah, and I'll say again, just to give you the technical, practical side of this, this is very easy for you to set up in your phone. If you go to the settings, again, if you have iOS 15 or 16 running on your phone, which most people do at this point, it's I believe it's called Focus now, and it's really actually very, I don't want to geek out on it too much, but you can actually set these different focus modes.
Right.
So you can have one for when you're working, one for when you're personal. Like for right now, I have one on for recording because we're recording and I don't want to be getting notifications while I'm recording. And you can actually even set it for schedules, like you said, till from certain time, but you can even set it for certain locations. So if you say, hey, I'm at my office, so it's going to put me in work mode, you can set it based on what apps you're using. So you say, hey, I'm using,
Mm.
Google Docs or Pages to write a sermon or write something. It's going to turn these certain focus modes on. So you really can. But if you spend about 5 to 10 minutes in that setting, you can set that up. And also, Brian, you talked about the screen time feature. You can also set up things to where you lock yourself out of certain apps after you've been using them for too long. And so, like I said, I think I don't use Android, so I don't know, but I'll give Apple that. They have at least empowered you to limit your time on your phone. So
Mm.
take advantage of these features that are built in, especially this Do Not Disturb and Focus feature. Because and this is more philosophy than practicality, but you just have to realize and ask yourself a question. Every time you get notified, whether it be a message or a notification from social media, whatever, is this urgent? And then always ask the follow up
Mm.
question, really? Because
Yeah. Yeah.
because really, probably 9 out of 10 times it's not. And I've tried to help people understand that. I got someone close to me who it seems like every time they get a message, they just have to reply. And I always say, hey,
Right.
is that something really you have to deal with right now? And the answer is almost
Mm.
always no. And so that's what's nice about these is it kind of eliminates that distraction. So that is so practical, but it's so needed. Like again, this feature is there on your phone if you're using iPhone in
Mhm.
particular, and it's on your iPad
Mhm.
and your Mac. It goes across all the devices. Take advantage of it. So that's the first one. Use these feature, the Do Not Disturb and Focus feature on your phone. And then the number two, this is the one. This is the one. Because I've had this conversation with people before, and they're just, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's going to be worse, King James onlyism and debating that, or this one right here. And that is this: take email off your phone. Brian, take it away.
Yeah, man, the addiction is real. Okay. I remember the first time I was ever exposed to that. I heard Carrie Schmidt one time in California. Yeah, I think it was a staff meeting. He wasn't even talking about this, but in a side comment, it woke me up to this idea. He said, I have times when I check my email.
Mm-hmm.
And I immediately started thinking, wait a second, like my email's just constantly
Yep.
checked, like it's constantly rolling in. Well, that is because you've set it up that way, because you've given yourself unlimited access to it. And I like that idea where you set certain times in a day to open up your email application on your computer and then take care of email business in dedicated times.
Yep.
Now, it may be that your work is directly related to email. For instance, my secretary at our church is part time. She works 20 hours a week for me, and she works the rest of her time in her other business. And her other business has a lot of troubleshooting aspects to it. So she literally, part of her job is clearing email. If you were an IT guy, you get tickets, they call them.
Yes.
You're eliminating tickets. You're
Yep.
punching through tickets. Well, you don't have a choice. That's your job. Your
Yep.
job is answering email. My job is not answering email. Okay.
Yeah.
My job is pastoring a church, whatever. So you need to know what your job. I'm not talking about taking something that's going to hinder your job. I'm talking about taking away something that's going to hinder you from doing your job. Okay. So try to
Yep.
separate those two. Now, here's the thing. I've got email on my phone, or I can't have it on my phone, and I've got email here on my desktop. I think your wiser um, uh, response to answering email is to set certain times. And let me give you my recommended times here. And I don't want to get ahead of myself here. No, I'm not gonna say it right now. I'm getting
Okay.
ready. I was about to get ahead of myself. So, but let me say this. Let me say dedicate certain times to email. And can we just be honest here for just a second? How many emails Again, if they're not directly related to the work that you have to do. How many emails do you get in a day that demanded you get that information right when it
Yep.
came to you? And the
Yep.
answer is, I am telling you, very little. I was gone for 7 weeks and I did not receive one email that was critical to my life, to my ministry, to my church. My secretary answered my emails for me. I had an emergency email set up during the sabbatical that only she knew and only my wife had. So if there was a real problem, she could send an email, Pastor, somebody died. You should probably, respond to this. 7 weeks, and that didn't happen. In the regular course of regular rhythms, I do not have any emergency emails. So guess what? I can take it off my phone and I don't need to constantly check it. It eliminates one more thing. Now, when you do get into your email, there's 3 simple steps that you must do with your emails. Email will either require you to do something, delegate something, or delete something. Those are the three responses from email. I get an email. If I need to do something, I keep it in my inbox until I need to do it, until I get it done, Once it's done, I delete it. If I need to delegate it, that means I forward the email from my inbox, likely that is to my secretary, to set up a meeting or to take care of some travel arrangements or something for me. And once I delegate it, I delete it. Or it's a piece of garbage mail that I don't need and I need to delete it. Okay. So I open up my email. I got 30 minutes to do email. I'll set a timer, 30 minutes, and I will plow through the do, delegate, and delete as much as I can. 30 minutes is over. I'm done. And I go back to the other things that I need to do. You don't need to email on your phone. I'd be willing to bet the vast majority of people listen to this conversation do not need, N-E-E-D, you do not need email on your phone. If you do, no argument here. If you don't, take it off if you want to be productive.
It was great to have you join us for this episode. And if you want to make sure that you don't miss any upcoming content, you're going to want to make sure that you're subscribed to our YouTube channel and that you follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you enjoy this content, then please don't hesitate to leave us that 5-star review. And then also tell other church leaders and pastors about this podcast. We would really appreciate you helping us spread the word. This podcast is hosted by Brian Sams. It's produced by myself, Luke Clayton, and my team at mustincrease.com. We really look forward to having you join us in the next episode as we continue to advance a reformation, a fellowship, partnership, and gospel hope amongst Bible-believing pastors and churches right here on Church Advance with Brian Sams.